Croc, the legend of the Gobbos. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it. Except now, you definitely at least heard of it. This quirky 3D platformer from the 90s recently received a remaster with an even more recent, upgraded edition of that remaster known as Croc, Legend of the Gobbos Platinum Edition. Well, today I'm going to talk about why this is such a great remaster, and how one single aspect of the game that somehow relates to Rayman Origins highlights just what incredible level design Croc has. Releasing on PS1, Windows and Sega Saturn all the way back in 1997, Croc the Legend of the Gobbos had some pretty tough competition in the 3D platformer space. Mario 64 was dominating, Gex existed, and games like Banjo-Kazooie, Rayman 2 and DK64 were right around the corner. So what did Croc do that was especially unique to deserve itself a spot in the Platformer Hall of Fame? Well, at the time, critics thought not much. While never considered bad, Croc was seen as derivative, taking elements from other similar games of the era. But I would argue this is in no way a bad thing. Sure, it's not going to be in the history books for innovating 3D graphics open worlds, but it's also a perfectly fun experience that takes elements from various places and uses them in new ways to make an enjoyable platformer romp that was clearly remembered fondly enough to get remastered 28 years later. Which brings us to now, 2025, where I have Croc Legend of the Gobbos in my hands, except not in my hands, because God forbid a man orders a collector's edition and hopes it'll arrive the same year. But I do have a digital edition courtesy of Argonaut Games, so thanks again for that. Now, I could just review the game or do a little retrospective, but that's not actually what I want to do here. If you're a long-running viewer of my channel, you might remember a video I made roughly a year ago about Rayman Origins and how its level design synergizes with the speedrunning ideology in such a way that it creates endlessly enjoyable, replayable bite-sized levels. That's my favourite thing about Rayman Origins. It's the biggest thing that has me choosing that over Legends, really. I love smaller levels that can be beaten quickly, and I would take 100 small levels over 10 big ones in a game any day of the week, and luckily Croc understands this and nails it. Much like another 3D platforming competitor of the time, Crash Bandicoot, Croc the Legend of the Gobbos takes place over a set of short levels, usually with 2 or 3 rooms, all of which can be beaten in under 2 minutes if you really try. These are then separated by single room boss fights denoting the end of a chapter. In fact, Croc and Crash Bandicoot have a lot of similarities in their game structure. Anyway, like Rayman Origins, Crash has small, quick levels, and those are my favourite things about it, and Croc is no different. The very first level of Croc, obviously serving as a tutorial, can be beaten so quickly you might start to worry if the game will be over before you know it, and to be honest, it isn't exactly the longest game ever, but it is a PS1 era 3D platformer, so, you know, what were you expecting? Anywho, Croc has a pretty simple moveset and the goals of each level are just as simple. There are occasional enemies, platforms to platform, collectibles to gather, and extra lives to pick up. If you collect all the coloured crystals in a level, you'll get to open a secret door, usually leading to an extra Gobbo to collect, and if you collect all the Gobbos, well, you've 100%ed the level, I suppose. Throughout each level, there are typically multiple doors and routes you can take, some of which would then either get blocked off after you've taken that route, or the door you take will be no longer accessible, meaning it's very easy to miss some items on your first playthrough of a level. In fact, there is a very specific order of operations for each level if you do want to collect everything. This is smart because, like I said earlier, not being the longest game ever means that things like this encourage level replays, and they do wonders for the game's longevity and memorability. So when all's said and done, sure, you can breeze through these fairly short environments in a few minutes each, but if you slow down and enjoy the environment, collect everything, and complete every puzzle, you can sink hours into the game and have a ton of fun. So when this remaster came out, I was very excited to give it a go, but I did notice something strange. On PS5, the game doesn't have a platinum trophy, but it has others, you know, bronze, silver and gold. I thought it was odd, since usually there's a platinum for getting every other trophy, and I'm a fairly avid trophy hunter, so it raised my eyebrows a little bit. As it turns out, Croc didn't actually have enough regular trophies to warrant a platinum. So what Argonaut Games did was release the aptly named Platinum Edition of the game with a handful of new trophies, and of course the illustrious Platinum one. But what I love about this is that they added one huge feature that really ties the game together, in my opinion. Alongside some trophies relating to this, there is a new time trial mode for each level. Simply by going into the level and beating it as quick as you can, your time gets tracked and you can try to beat some predetermined target times, some of which are incredibly hard. This not only takes advantage of the level design being tight, but it adds more depth to the way the player is tasked with 100%ing the game. Like Rayman Origins, and Crash Bandicoot to an extent, Croc rewards you for both rushing and exploring. If you slow down, take your time and look at every nook and cranny, you will find all the secrets to get 100% in a level. But if you speed through as quick as possible, working out not just the best route to collect everything, but also the best route to miss everything and just make it to the end as quick as possible, the game again rewards you. I love time trials, I think they're such a fun, optional way of getting more fun out of the game. And I think Croc does this brilliantly. It knows the levels are quite small, so it gives the player a new challenge in finding the quickest route. I probably spent more time trying to perfect my runs than I did trying to find all the Gobbos when I played this, so as far as I'm concerned, this is a very, very, very welcome addition to the game. On top of this, one other thing I loved about this remaster was the versatility of the graphical options. Like some remasters, Croc allows you to switch between the original visuals and the new visuals, but on top of that there are also individual options to change things like the textures, the lighting, or even put a CRT filter on. This means if you wanna have nice lighting but prefer the old pixel textures, you can have it. I personally spent a while playing around with this just to see how good I could get the game to look, and I ended up really enjoying a slightly Frankenstein mix between the updated lighting and the older textures. It's clear that Croc the Legend of the Gobbos Platinum Edition was worked on by a team that really cares about the game, and I'm so glad that nearly 30 years after the series began and 25 years since the last release, Croc made his way back to us with this delightful release. Now, if only this would sell well enough for Argonaut to remaster Croc 2, then we'll be in business. And that's pretty much all I've got to say. I had a ton of fun with this game, so thanks again to Argonaut Games for sending me this, you're incredibly cool. I didn't want to do a full review or anything, I just sort of wanted to highlight one particular aspect I think the game excelled at, and if you know the channel, you know I'm a sucker for a good time trial. And since Croc Legend of the Gobbos Platinum Edition is full of short levels and time trials, this game was a no-brainer purchase for me. So much of a no-brainer that I pre-ordered the collector's edition as soon as I could, not realising that nearly a year later I still wouldn't have the game. So if you wanted to post that, or email me about sending it to the correct address, because I've moved house since I ordered it, so actually if you're watching this, anyone who has the power to, please email me. I've just realised I may have the collector's edition in an old house that I can no longer get to. Uh-oh. Okay, goodbye.